This is Srila Prabhupada's sitting place in his garden, where I spent a couple of hours every morning with him, fanning him with the chamra. And this is the Lord Brahma fountain that had to be running the whole time Prabhupada was in the garden. And the garden's a little different now. It's a little more lush. Very nice. There's the back of the house. And around here, that's where he got his massage, in that room in there. And over here is the kitchen. This is Srila Prabhupada's garden in Sri Vrindavan Dhama, in the back of his house. Every morning he would come down here and chant for about 2 hours on his beads. He had small beads, medium beads, and large beads, and he'd pick which ones he wanted to chant with. So we'd put fresh cloth on his seat every day. And I would light, before he came down, I would light incense and turn on his Lord Brahma fountain. He always wanted to have this fountain running. And so I put incense on each side in the ground so the smoke would be coming up around Srila Prabhupada. One day I lit this really strong incense, and Prabhupada said, "Take it away, it's too strong." So I brought back the kind that he liked, Keshar Chandan, which is saffron sandalwood incense. One day I was fanning Srila Prabhupada, as I did every morning, the whole time he was in here with the chamra, and a fly landed above his lip, and so he had his eyes closed chanting japa. So I was like moving my finger without touching him as close as I could get to try to get the fly away from Srila Prabhupada. But it just kept going back, trying to get the nectar of the lotus lips of the pure devotee. And so finally Prabhupada opened his eyes and he said, "You're fanning around the world, but you can't get the fly off my face. Give me that chamra." So he took the chamra and then he brushed it right across his face. And he said, "Do like this." He gave me the chamra back. A little bit later that fly came back, or another fly, landed on above Prabhupada's lip, and so I brushed it right on his face, and Prabhupada nodded his head. So I was puffed up thinking I got this service of fanning Prabhupada because I was like the best fanner in the whole world. I used to be a pujari also and for Gorni Thai, and so I was doing all the fancy motions, and I was thinking I'm the best chamra fanner, that's why I get to fan Srila Prabhupada. And so he humbled me there by saying I'm fanning around the world, but I can't get the fly off his face. So devotional service is practical, it's not for show. Another time, there was a little bush in the corner of the garden, and it had some little white flowers on it, like 4 flowers. So I put the flowers on his pillow, and Prabhupada held those in his left hand, his japa beads in his right hand, and his flowers in his left hand, and every day he was smelling the flowers. Not every day, all morning long. And so the next day, I picked all the flowers that day. So the next day, Prabhupada, when he sat down here, he put his hand out towards me, and he didn't say anything, but he held his hand towards me. So I knew he wanted those flowers, but I thought that little bush wouldn't have any more flowers because I picked them all the day before. But he didn't move his hand, so I thought I better go check. So I ran over there, and that same bush isn't here these days, but the next day there was eight flowers on that little bush. So I picked the flowers and gave them to him, and all morning he kept smelling those flowers, and he said, "Simply by smelling this flower, it regulates your life airs." So Prabhupada did everything he did with a purpose. Then we fasted for Nirjala Ekadasi. Upendra was one of the other servants. He did the massages and some cooking and other things around the house. And so we fasted for Nirjala Ekadasi. I was 23. And by 10 o'clock at night, without water or food, we got so weak we could barely stand up. And Prabhupada had been fasting for about a whole month. This is in the middle of June. And so they'd still make a plate for him and bring it to him and try to give him to eat, and he'd say, "Distribute. Distribute the plate to the devotees." So, getting frustrated that how could we, so Upendra asked Srila Prabhupada, "Srila Prabhupada, we're young boys and we can barely fast for one day. Here you've been fasting for a month. How do you do it?" And Srila Prabhupada said, "I am living proof that the soul is not dependent on the body for subsistence, but rather the body is dependent on the soul." So I'm standing here with the camera and like, wow, it's just amazing how Srila Prabhupada transcended the body. Another time, Sri Vrindavan Maharaj came. He came to the back, and Srila Prabhupada, he started telling Srila Prabhupada about the scientific preaching program they just had in Bombay. And Srila Prabhupada, even though he was sick and fasting and the skin was actually hanging on his bones, on his arms, he said, actually I appeared in this world for two reasons. He sat up straight and he started pointing his finger in the air. I appeared in this world for two reasons: to establish Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead and to defeat these rascal scientists. And you're doing this, I'm very pleased. So, that was an amazing... There's a lot of construction going on all the time here in Krishna Balaram Mandir. That's why I tried to record this without all those noises, but the one noise you hear, the temple bell. Prabhupada always wanted that bell going during Arati. And he would look at his watch to make sure, wherever he was in this house, the temple is just right next to here. So he would always make sure the Artiks were on time. He used to also come to our Pujari meetings, and he would say that punctuality and cleanliness are the most important things in deity worship. So, also in the garden, the secretary would read letters from the devotees all over the world to Srila Prabhupada, and he would dictate a response. So, since Prabhupada said on May 17, 1977, that he'd come here to Vrindavan specifically to leave his body, devotees started to question, well, if Prabhupada's leaving his body, who's going to be the guru after Srila Prabhupada? Is he going to appoint gurus? And so Prabhupada was asked that. And he said he wasn't going to appoint gurus, but he was going to appoint officiating acharyas, representatives who would initiate on his behalf. So he was asked about that in May, a few days after he arrived. Because on May 17th, there's an arrival address where he announces that he's coming here to leave his body. A few days later, the secretary was asking Prabhupada, if he's going to appoint gurus, and he mentioned that he's going to appoint officiating acharyas. So, on July 7th, Srila Prabhupada in this garden, tomorrow again read a letter from the temple president recommending some devotees for initiation. And so on July 7th, Srila Prabhupada named the first group of representatives. And then so the secretary, then he typed up a letter after Prabhupada dictated the names, and he typed up a letter and he brought it to Srila Prabhupada a couple days later on July 9th, 1977, and read the letter to Prabhupada, a newsletter to all the temples and GBCs. And that letter is available on the internet, and where Prabhupada is described, he's saying that the people that are initiated are still Srila Prabhupada's disciples. So that's how Prabhupada wanted us to go on, is that we'd initiate on his behalf within ISKCON. And then if we're a qualified guru, we can initiate our own disciples in our own institution. Just like Prabhupada didn't initiate in the Gaudiya Math. It's not proper for us to initiate within ISKCON as our own disciples. We're supposed to initiate on behalf of Srila Prabhupada, and everyone is his disciples. That's the way Srila Prabhupada. Then like a couple days after that, tomorrow Krishna Maharaj asked Srila Prabhupada if we should put Vyasasans in the temple room for these representatives. And Srila Prabhupada said, no, that would create enmity among my disciples. Like that. So that's one of the most important things that happened in this garden. Another time I got electrocuted on Srila Prabhupada's roof. And I'm going to tell that story later, but I almost died. I was out of my body for 2 hours. And I was still a brahmachari in the service of Prabhupada. I was just a few feet from Prabhupada when I left my body. And so I'm thinking, it would have been better to leave then. And I'm thinking, well, maybe Krishna saved me just so, because for a long time, devotees didn't understand the guru issue and how Prabhupada is still the guru. So, and still, it's a problem in ISKCON today. It still needs to be resolved. All glories to Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada. If we just hear from him, everything will be sublime. Hare Krishna.